The great crystal dome of Vex Prime gleamed under 3 alien suns. Inside the massive structure, representatives from 12 different worlds sat around a circular table that floated in midair. The air hummed with tension as holographic displays showed star maps marked with red zones. Each red mark meant another dead solar system, consumed by something the galaxy had never seen before. Dae-ho Kim adjusted his simple black suit and tried not to stare at the aliens around him. To his left sat a Valorian, its blue skin glowing softly as thoughts passed between it and others of its kind. Across the table, a Nexari floated in a bubble of liquid, its tentacles dancing over control panels that seemed to be made of pure light. The Corvin representatives looked like walking tanks, their 4 arms crossed as they glared at everyone with burning orange eyes. "The Void Swarm has taken another system," announced Kextar, the Valorian High Consul. His voice echoed inside everyone's head without him opening his mouth. 14 worlds lost in 2 months? We must act now." Hai-Jin Park, sitting beside Dae-ho, leaned forward to get a better look at the holographic display. The red zones formed a rough line across one arm of the galaxy, moving steadily toward the core worlds where billions lived. Earth was far away from the danger, but these aliens had called for help from every spacefaring species they could find. "Our analysis shows the swarm grows stronger with each world it consumes," said Zilnoth, the Nexari representative. The creature's voice came from speakers built into its floating tank. "The bioships absorb matter and energy, then create more of themselves. Standard estimates suggest complete galactic consumption within 5 years if unchecked." The Corvin. War Chief Vekshar slammed one of his massive fists on the table. "Enough talk. My warriors have faced 1,000 enemies. These swarm creatures will fall before our battle fury like all the others." "Your warriors are brave, Vekshar, but this enemy is unlike anything we have encountered," Kextar replied, his mental voice carrying notes of worry. "They adapt to our weapons faster than we can modify them. 3 Corvin battle fleets have already been destroyed." Dae-ho cleared his throat softly. The sound seemed tiny in the vast chamber, but somehow it drew attention. 12 pairs of alien eyes turned toward the human delegation. Most of those eyes showed curiosity mixed with something that looked like amusement. "Earth would like to offer our assistance in this crisis," Dae-ho said, standing slowly. "We may be new to space travel, but we have experience fighting adaptive enemies." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then Kextar's mental laughter filled everyone's mind. "Humans, yes, we have read your files. You have been in space for what, 50 of your years? You still fight wars among yourselves with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Your species has not even achieved energy shields," added Zilnoth, tentacles waving dismissively. "Your largest warships are smaller than our scout vessels. What could you possibly contribute to a galactic crisis?" Vekshar's orange eyes blazed as he studied the humans. "I have heard of your kind. You wage war against your own species for territory and resources. Primitive behavior. True warriors fight for honor and glory, not dirt and metal." Dae-ho felt his face grow warm but kept his voice steady. "We understand you may have concerns about our capabilities. However, Earth has successfully defended against several alien incursions in recent years. We have learned to fight enemies with superior technology." "Those were pirates and scouts." Kextar's mental voice carried clear contempt. "Outcasts using stolen ships and broken weapons. The Void Swarm has consumed battle fleets that could turn your entire star system to plasma in minutes." The holographic display changed to show technical readouts of human weapons and ships. Compared to the alien technology around the table, Earth's military looked like children's toys. Their plasma weapons had a tenth the power of Valorian systems. Their hull armor was simple metal alloys instead of the quantum-bonded materials used by the Nexari. Their fastest ships took days to cross distances that alien vessels covered in hours. "Look at these specifications," Zilnoth said, highlighting human missile systems. Chemical propulsion, metal warheads, no energy absorption capabilities, no quantum targeting. How do they even function in space? "With great difficulty, I imagine," added a representative from the insectoid Zephyri. "Their life support systems require them to carry actual atmosphere instead of synthesizing it from quantum foam. Inefficient." Jinwoo Lee, Earth's military strategist, had been quiet during the discussion. Now he leaned forward, studying the tactical displays that showed void swarm attack patterns. His eyes moved quickly over the data, noting things that seemed to escape the alien's attention. "The swarm always attacks in the same formation," he said quietly to Hye-Jin. "3 waves, each one larger than the last, and they always go for the biggest ships first." Hye-Jin nodded but said nothing. The aliens were too busy dismissing human capabilities to listen to tactical observations. "Perhaps," Kextar said, his mental voice taking on a tone of forced politeness, "Earth could assist with refugee transport. Your cargo ships, while slow, might help evacuate civilians from threatened worlds." "We did not come here to run from this enemy," Daeho replied firmly. "We came to fight it." This time the alien laughter was audible. The Corvins roared. The Valorians filled the chamber with mental amusement, and even the usually serious Nexari made sounds that might have been chuckling. "Fight?" Vekshar stood to his full height, towering over the human delegation. "Little. Mammals, my weakest warriors could destroy your strongest ships before you knew battle had begun. Your weapons could not scratch the paint on a Corvin battlecruiser. Your species has potential," Kextar added with what seemed like kindness. "But you are not ready for this level of conflict. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when you have developed proper technology and learned to fight as civilized beings instead of savage pack animals." The vote was quick and unanimous. Earth's offer of military assistance was formally rejected. The humans were thanked for their willingness to help and invited to assist with non-combat operations if they chose. As the meeting ended and the aliens began discussing real battle plans, Daeho gathered his small delegation. They walked through corridors filled with wonders that Earth's scientists could barely imagine. Gravity fields that shifted direction at will, walls made of crystallized starlight, transport tubes that moved faster than sound without creating any turbulence. "They are making a mistake," Jinwoo said quietly as they reached their ship. "I saw the battle recordings from the lost fleets. The aliens fight like they are showing off. All energy and noise and bright lights. The swarm learns from that." "What would you do differently?" Hye-Jin asked. Jinwoo looked back at the crystal dome where the Galactic Council continued their planning. "I would fight dirty." As the human ship departed Vex Prime, none of the aliens noticed Jinwoo's detailed recordings of their tactical discussions. They were too confident in their own superiority to worry about what the primitive mammals might do with information about galactic military strategy. The war was about to begin, and humanity had been told to stay home. But Daeho Kim was all ready, composing a message to Earth's military command. They might not be invited to this fight, but they were going to be ready for it anyway. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council dismissed Earth's offer to help. The great alien fleet now gathered at the edge of the Kepler Nebula, a swirling mass of gas and stars that glowed like a rainbow in the darkness of space. It was the largest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. Admiral Heiran Cho stood on the bridge of the human observation ship Soul's Pride, watching the alien preparations through long-range sensors. The ship hung far from the main fleet, officially there to observe and learn. The aliens had made it clear that humans were welcome to watch, but nothing more. "Look at the size of those ships," whispered Lieutenant Taemin Song, staring at the holographic display. The Corvan dreadnoughts stretched for kilometers, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Nexari vessels floated like jellyfish made of crystal and light, their quantum cannons charging with energy that bent space around them. 1,200 warships, reported Hyojin Park, who had remained as Earth's official observer. Combined firepower equivalent to our entire global nuclear arsenal multiplied by 1,000. The aliens are confident this will end the Void Swarm threat permanently. Through the ship's communications array, they could hear the final preparations. Kextar's mental voice reached across space, coordinating Valorian mind-linked squadrons. Vekshar roared battle songs that made his warriors howl with anticipation. The Nexari calculated probability matrices that showed a 97% chance of complete victory. "Contact!" announced the Soul's Pride sensor officer. "Void Swarm forces detected approaching from the Nebula core." The alien fleet moved forward in perfect formation. The Corvans charged ahead in a wedge formation, their massive ships like spear points aimed at the enemy. Behind them came the Valorians, their sleek vessels moving in patterns too complex for non-telepathic minds to follow. The Nexari held the center, their quantum weapons already beginning to tear holes in reality itself. From Earth's position, the approaching enemy looked like a dark stain spreading across the nebula. The Void Swarm ships were not built like normal spacecraft. They grew instead of being constructed, organic curves and pulsing surfaces that seemed more alive than mechanical. They moved like a school of predatory fish, flowing around obstacles, and reforming their ranks without visible communication. Enemy count is... The sensor officer paused, checking his readings. Approximately 800 bioships. Size range from frigate class to... My God, some of those things are bigger than space stations. The first clash came when the Corvan fleet met the swarm's advance guard. Vekshar himself led the charge in his flagship Eternal Fury, its plasma cannons lighting up space like a small sun. The initial impact seemed to favor the aliens. Corvan firepower tore through swarm bioships, leaving debris floating in their wake. "The aliens are winning," Song reported, excitement in his voice. Admiral Cho watched more carefully. "Wait, look at the debris." The remains of destroyed swarm ships were not floating away like normal wreckage. Instead, they pulsed with strange energy. As the human crew watched, the organic debris began to merge and reshape itself. Within minutes, new bioships emerged from what should have been lifeless wreckage. "They are learning," Hyojin said quietly. "Each ship that dies teaches the swarm how to resist the weapons that killed it." The second wave of swarm forces hit the Corvan fleet 15 minutes later. This time, the bioships' hulls had adapted. Plasma cannons that had been devastatingly effective in the first engagement now barely scratched the enemy's surface. The Corvans found themselves fighting an enemy that was becoming immune to their weapons in real time. Vekshar's roar of frustration echoed across all communication channels as his warriors began to fall back. "Impossible! No enemy has ever adapted to Corvan firepower." The Valorian fleet moved to support their allies, and for a moment it seemed like their telepathic coordination would turn the tide. 50 Valorian ships moved as one mind, their energy weapons focused on single targets. The concentrated firepower overwhelmed the swarm's adaptation, destroying several large bioships completely. But the victory was short-lived. The swarm's own hive mind proved faster than telepathic communication. As soon as the Valorians destroyed one group of bioships, the entire swarm shifted tactics. They stopped trying to absorb the energy weapons and instead began to reflect them back at their sources. The Valorian flagship just took a direct hit from its own main cannon, the sensor officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. Kexitar's mental scream of pain reached across space as feedback from the reflected weapons burned through the telepathic network. One by one, Valorian ships began to drift powerless as their crews collapsed from psychic overload. Now it was the Nexari's turn. Their quantum weapons represented the most advanced technology in the galaxy, capable of manipulating the basic forces of reality. When they fired, space itself seemed to crack like broken glass. The first few swarm ships caught in the quantum field simply stopped existing, removed from reality at the fundamental level. "That has to work," Song muttered. "You cannot adapt to having your existence deleted." But the swarm found a way. Instead of trying to resist the quantum weapons, the bioships began to phase in and out of normal space-time. The Nexari weapons passed through them harmlessly while they existed in parallel dimensions. Then the swarm ships returned to normal space behind the alien battle line. "How are they doing that?" Admiral Cho demanded. "Unknown," her science officer replied. "They are using quantum mechanics we do not understand. It is like they are rewriting the laws of physics as they fight." The battle turned into a massacre. Corvan ships that had conquered 100 worlds died like candles being blown out. Valorian vessels drifted empty as their crews lay unconscious, their minds burned by reflected telepathic energy. Nexari ships found their reality-bending weapons, turned against them, creating space-time distortions that crushed their crystalline hulls. In 2 hours, 1,200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships were reduced to scattered debris. The few surviving vessels fled in disorder, their crews broken and their confidence shattered. Ships that had never retreated from any battle now ran for their lives from an enemy they could not understand or defeat. The Void Swarm did not pursue the fleeing aliens. Instead, the bioships spread out through the battlefield, absorbing the wreckage of the defeated fleet. With each piece of destroyed technology they consumed, the swarm grew larger and more sophisticated. "They are not just winning," Hyojin observed, her voice filled with horror. "They are evolving. Every weapon they face makes them stronger." Admiral Cho watched as the swarm finished consuming the battlefield debris. The bioships that emerged from the feeding were noticeably different from those that had started the battle, larger, more complex, and with new structures that seemed designed to counter specific alien technologies. "Set course for Earth," she ordered. "Best possible speed." "Admiral," Song asked, "should we inform the Galactic Council of our observations?" Cho looked at the tactical display one more time. The swarm was already moving toward the galactic core, heading for worlds filled with billions of civilians who had never imagined their mighty fleets could be defeated. "Send them everything we recorded," she said. "But I do not think they will listen. They still believe this is about having better weapons and stronger shields." As the soul's pride jumped, To faster-than-light speed, Admiral Cho began composing a very different message. This one was addressed to Earth's military command, and it carried a simple recommendation: prepare for war. The aliens had learned that their superior technology was not enough. Now humanity would get its chance to show what primitive determination could accomplish against an enemy that thought it had already won. The blue-white star of Mindara cast its light across 7 planets, but only one mattered now. The Valorian homeworld hung like a jewel in space, its surface covered with crystal cities that sparkled in the starlight. 5 billion telepaths lived there, connected by mental bonds that had taken 10,000 years to develop. Kextar stood in the ruins of what had once been the Galactic Council's primary command center. Half the building had collapsed when the quantum communicators overloaded during the battle at Kepler Nebula. The surviving council members sat among the rubble, their confidence shattered along with their mighty fleet. Long-range sensors confirm. "It," reported Zilnoth, his voice coming from a cracked speaker in his damaged life support tank. "The Void Swarm will reach Mindara in 18 hours. Our defensive fleet consists of 47 ships, most of them damaged." Vekshar sat with his head in his 4 hands, his warrior's pride broken. Of the 300 ships he had brought to the Nebula battle, only 12 had returned. His greatest warriors were dead, consumed by an enemy that grew stronger with each victory. "We failed them all," the Corvan war chief said quietly. "Every world, every species that trusted us to protect them. We promised victory and delivered extinction." Kextar tried to reach out with his telepathic abilities, seeking comfort from his people on the planet below. But the psychic feedback from the battle had damaged his mind. Where once he could communicate with millions simultaneously, now he could barely touch a few dozen thoughts. "Send the evacuation order," he said finally. "At least some of our people might escape in the remaining ships." "Where would we go?" asked the Zephyri representative, her insect wings buzzing with nervous energy. "The swarm will consume every world in the galaxy eventually. We have delayed them by perhaps a few months." As if summoned by their despair, the long-range sensors began to sound alerts. The Void Swarm had arrived at the edge of the Mindara system, moving with the confidence of predators who knew their prey was trapped. Kextar activated the quantum communicator one last time, sending messages across space to every species that had once been part of the Galactic Alliance. Most would never receive the transmissions. The swarm had already consumed their worlds, but perhaps someone, somewhere, would remember that the great civilizations had tried to stand against the darkness. One message went to a small blue planet on the edge of explored space. Kextar had not intended to ask for help. Earth's primitive. Technology could not save anyone now. Instead, he sent an apology. "To the humans of Earth," his mental voice carried across the void, "we regret our dismissal of your offer to assist in this crisis. You deserve better treatment from those who claim to be civilized. We hope you will remember us kindly when we are gone." President So Young-on received the message while meeting with Earth's military leadership in the deep bunkers beneath Geneva. The quantum transmission crackled with interference, but the meaning was clear. The aliens who had laughed at humanity's primitive weapons were about to die. "How long until the swarm reaches them?" she asked General Wu Jin-Yu. 17 hours and 32 minutes, the general replied, checking his tactical display. "Our fastest ships could reach Mindara in 16 hours if we left immediately. Our fleet is not designed to fight the swarm," Admiral Heiran Cho pointed out. We have studied the battle recordings. Our weapons are even more primitive than what the aliens used." President Ahn stood silently for a moment, weighing the decision. Earth's military had spent 6 months preparing for this moment, but everyone understood the odds. The Void Swarm had destroyed the galaxy's greatest fleets. What could humanity possibly accomplish? "They are not asking for our help," she said finally, "but that does not mean they do not need it." 2 hours later, the largest fleet Earth had ever assembled jumped to faster-than-light speed. 43 warships, led by Admiral Cho's flagship New Seoul, raced across space toward a battle they probably could not win. The human fleet arrived at Mindara just as the Void Swarm began its final approach to the planet. Through his damaged, telepathic senses, Kextar felt a familiar presence. The primitive mammals had come after all. "Impossible," whispered Zilnoth. "They cannot be here. Their ships are too slow." But there they were. 43 small vessels positioning themselves between the advancing swarm and the Valorian homeworld. Compared to the bioships approaching like a dark tide, the human fleet looked like children's toys facing a tsunami. Human. "Fleet, this is Mindara Command," Kextar transmitted. "You must withdraw immediately. Your presence here is suicide." Admiral Cho's voice came back clear and strong. "Mindara Command, this is Admiral Hei-Ron Cho of the Earth Defense Force. We are here to provide assistance. Please stand by." The first wave of swarm bioships crashed against the human battle line like a living asteroid field. The aliens watching from their command bunkers expected to see another massacre, perhaps buying them a few precious minutes to complete their evacuation. Instead, they witnessed something they had never seen before. The human ships did not try to match the swarm's power with superior technology. They fought differently. Captain Taemin Song's destroyer Busan Thunder fired its main guns at point-blank range into a bioship 3 times its size. The kinetic projectiles, dismissed by the aliens as primitive, punched through the organic hull like armor-piercing needles. The swarm ship, adapted to absorb energy weapons, had no defense against simple metal moving at tremendous speed. "Direct. Hit!" Song reported over the communication channel. "Target is breaking apart." Across the battle line, human ships opened fire with weapons the galaxy considered obsolete: chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, and nuclear warheads struck. Bioships that had learned to counter every advanced technology. The swarm had adapted to energy absorption, quantum manipulation, and telepathic coordination. It had never encountered enemies who still used gunpowder and uranium. "How are they doing this?" Zilnoth asked, his tentacles dancing over sensor controls that could barely track the fast-moving human ships. "They are fighting like savages," Vekshar said, but his voice carried wonder instead of contempt. "No formation, no coordination, no honor. Just pure aggression and chaos." Kextar watched through the battle recordings as human fighters did things that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They rammed damaged ships into enemy formations. They detonated their own vessels as weapons. They used tactics that no sane species would consider. But it was working. For the first time since the war began, the Void Swarm was being hurt faster than it could adapt. "The swarm is trying to modify its bioships," reported a Valorian technician who was monitoring the enemy's adaptive processes. "But the humans keep changing their attack patterns. The swarm cannot learn fast enough." A human frigate called Mountains Edge flew directly into the mouth of a massive bioship, then detonated its reactor from the inside. The explosion lit up space like a small star, taking out not just the target, but 3 smaller swarm vessels caught in the blast. They are willing to die, Kextar realized. Not for glory or honor, but for pure tactical advantage. They sacrifice themselves as easily as they fire weapons. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the Void Swarm's advance force was scattered debris floating around Mindara. The humans had lost 18 ships, but they had achieved something the galaxy's greatest militaries could not. They had made the enemy retreat. The war room aboard the New Soul hummed with activity as Admiral Heiran Cho studied the tactical displays. 3 days had passed since the first victory at Mindara, and intelligence reports showed the main Void Swarm fleet was regrouping. What had started as a rescue mission was becoming something much larger. Swarm fleet composition has changed, reported Lieutenant Yujin Kang, her fingers dancing over holographic controls. They have absorbed our ship debris from the battle and modified their bioships accordingly. Enemy vessels now show armor plating similar to our hull composites. Adaptive learning, General Wu Jin Yu observed. But they are still thinking like their previous enemies. They want to absorb our technology and use it against us. Cho nodded. That gives us an advantage. We understand adaptive learning better than they think. Across the Mindara system, human ships worked alongside alien survivors to prepare defenses. The cooperation was awkward at first. The Valorians kept trying to coordinate telepathically with humans who could not hear mental communication. The Corvins insisted on formal battle rituals that made no sense to human tactical doctrine, but gradually something new began to emerge. Major Yujin Kang found herself working with a young Corvin warrior named Sci-Fi, teaching him how human ground forces operated. You do not form ranks, Sci-Fi observed, watching human Marines practice assault tactics. No battle lines, no honor guards. How do you maintain discipline? We do not fight for discipline, Kang replied, adjusting the alien's grip on a human rifle. We fight for results. Sometimes that means breaking formation. Sometimes it means running away. Sometimes it means doing things that look cowardly, but accomplish the mission. The concept seemed to disturb the Corvin. His people had fought the same way for thousands of years, with rigid formations and formal challenges. The idea of tactical flexibility was foreign to his warrior culture. But how do you know if you have won with honor? He asked. We win when the enemy is dead and our people are alive, Kang said simply. Honor comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Similar conversations were happening throughout the human fleet. Dr. Eunji Bae, a xenobiologist who had studied Void Swarm specimens, worked with Valorian scientists to understand enemy adaptation patterns. Your approach to biological analysis is crude, complained Veltar, a Valorian researcher whose telepathic abilities had been damaged in the Nebula battle. You dissect and examine physical samples instead of reading genetic memories directly. Our crude methods tell us things your telepathy might miss, Bae replied, pointing to tissue samples under a microscope. Look at the cellular structure. The swarm bioships are not just alive, they are hungry. Constantly hungry. They have to consume matter to maintain their existence. All living things require sustenance, Veltar pointed out. Yes, but not like this. Bae showed him the analysis results. These cells burn through energy at an incredible rate. The swarm is not just expanding to conquer territory, it is expanding because it has to. If it stops consuming new matter, it will starve. The revelation changed human tactical planning completely. Admiral Cho called together her senior staff for an emergency meeting. If Dr. Bae is correct, we have been thinking about this war wrong, she announced. The swarm is not an army trying to conquer the galaxy. It is a massive organism that will die if it stops eating. That makes it predictable. How so? Asked Captain Song, still recovering from injuries sustained during the Mindara battle. Hungry animals make mistakes, General Yu explained. They take unnecessary risks to get food. They attack targets that do not make strategic sense. We can use that. The new strategy was tested when the reformed Void Swarm fleet attacked the mining world of Kepler 7th. The planet was rich in heavy metals but had no strategic value. A thinking enemy would have bypassed it to strike at more important targets. But the swarm could not resist the rich mineral deposits. It attacked with everything it had, expecting easy prey from the lightly defended mining stations. Instead, it found a trap. Sergeant Minho Jion led a demolition team through the tunnels beneath Kepler 7's main mining complex. His job was simple: turn the entire planet into a weapon. Charges set on levels 7 through 15, he reported through his communications gear. Nuclear devices in place at the main reactor cores. When the swarm ships get close enough to start feeding, we light everything up. Copy that, Sergeant, came Admiral Cho's voice from orbit. You have 15 minutes to reach minimum safe distance. John looked at his team of 20 volunteers. They all knew the math. The planet's surface was 15 minutes away by transport. The tunnels they needed to seal would take 20 minutes to collapse safely. Someone had to stay behind to make sure the charges detonated properly. You heard the Admiral, Jaeon told his team. Get to the transports. I will finish this. Sergeant, we can find another way, protested Corporal Jahoon Kim. No time, Jaeon replied, checking his detonator controls. The swarm is already landing. Go. That is an order. 19 soldiers ran for the surface transports. John stayed behind in the deep tunnels, watching his sensors as massive bioships settled onto the planet's surface like feeding whales. They began to consume the mining equipment, the facilities, and finally the rocky crust itself. Swarm ships are committed to feeding, he reported. They cannot pull away now without losing half their mass. Sergeant, please reconsider. Admiral Cho's voice carried across the communication channel. We can find another way. John smiled as he watched the bioships dig deeper into the planet, exposing the carefully placed nuclear charges. Admiral, this is the way. Tell my family I did my duty. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Kepler 7th became a miniature sun for 17 seconds, vaporizing everything within 100 kilometers of the surface. 37 Void Swarm bioships died instantly, their organic hulls unable to survive temperatures that could melt titanium. But the real victory was what happened next. The surviving swarm ships went into feeding frenzy, trying to absorb the energy and debris from the explosion. They fought each other for the mineral-rich wreckage, their hive mind fractured by desperate hunger. They are attacking each other, reported the sensor officer aboard New Seoul. The swarm fleet is breaking apart. Human ships swept down on the confused bioships like predators hunting scattered prey. Without their unified coordination, the individual swarm vessels were vulnerable to the same kinetic weapons that had worked at Mindara. The Battle of Kepler 7 ended with the complete destruction of the Void Swarm's second major fleet. But more importantly, it showed the aliens something they had never seen before. Humans fighting as a truly unified force. I do not understand, Kextar transmitted to Admiral Cho after the battle. Your soldiers died for tactical advantage. Your sergeant killed himself to destroy enemy ships. How do you maintain morale when death is so common? We do not fight for ourselves, Cho replied. We fight for humanity, for the idea that thinking beings should be free to choose their own path. Sergeant Jayon died so that 5 billion Valorians could keep their telepathic dreams, so that Corvan warriors could find new battles to fight with honor, so that Nexari scientists could keep exploring the mysteries of quantum space. But he was just one human, Kextar persisted. How could his death matter against such vast forces? Every human death matters, Admiral Cho said quietly. But sometimes the death of one can save millions. That is a choice we are willing to make. For the first time in his long life, the Valorian High Consul began to understand why the galaxy's most primitive species had become its most effective defenders. They fought not for technology or glory, but for each other. And that made them more dangerous than any weapon the Swarm had ever faced. The final battle took place in the void between galaxies, where the original Void Swarm hive mind had been hiding since the war began. Admiral Heiran Cho stood on the bridge of the New Sol, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for what everyone hoped would be the last fight. 3 months had passed since Kepler 7th. In that time, the human way of war had spread throughout the surviving alien species. Corvan warriors learned to fight dirty when honor was less important than victory. Valorian telepaths practiced communicating with non-psychic species using actual words. Nexari scientists studied human weapons technology, amazed that such simple devices could be so effective. Fleet status report, Cho ordered. 47 human vessels operational, Lieutenant Eugene Kang reported. 63 allied ships from 7 different species. Total fleet strength, 110 warships. It was the smallest force ever assembled for a galactic war, but it was also the most unified. Every captain understood the mission. Every crew member knew their job. Most importantly, every species had learned to fight like humans. Long-range sensors detect the hive mind structure, announced the sensor officer. Distance, 50,000 kilometers. Size. He paused, checking his readings twice. Admiral, the central hive mind is larger than most moons. Through the viewports, they could see it hanging in space like a cancer made of living metal and flesh. The structure pulsed with dark energy, spawning new bioships even as they watched. This was the source of the Void Swarm, the intelligence that had consumed a dozen civilizations. All ships, this is Admiral Cho, she broadcast on all frequencies. Remember what we learned. The Swarm adapts to whatever we use against it. So, we use everything all at once and we do not give it time to learn. President So Young-An's voice came through the quantum communicator from Earth. Admiral, you have authorization to use any weapon necessary to complete this mission. The entire planet is watching. Make us proud. The attack began with the Corvan ships charging straight at the hive mind structure, their plasma cannons blazing. Behind them came the Valorians, their telepaths linked in a battle meld that coordinated the assault. The Nexari flanked from both sides, their quantum weapons tearing holes in space-time, and in the center, the human fleet advanced with weapons that should have been obsolete: chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, and nuclear warheads. But they also carried something new, devices that Dr. Yoon-ji Bae had developed after studying swarm biology for months. Deploying hunger bombs, reported Captain Taemin's song from the destroyer Busan Thunder. The weapons looked like simple, metal cylinders, but they contained a special surprise: synthetic molecules that mimicked the chemical signals the swarm used to identify food sources. The bombs detonated throughout the hive mind structure, releasing clouds of false pheromones. Suddenly, every part of the massive organism thought every other part was edible. The hive mind began to devour itself, its own bioships turning on the central structure in a feeding frenzy. "It is working!" shouted Kextar over the communication channel. "The swarm is consuming its own mass!" But the victory celebration was premature. The hive mind's central intelligence realized what was happening and began to reassert control. Bioships that had been attacking each other suddenly turned toward the Allied fleet with coordinated fury. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Admiral Cho ordered. "Phase 2, execute now!" The second wave of attack came from an unexpected direction. Sergeant Major Ja-hoon Kim led a boarding party of 50 volunteers in small assault shuttles, flying directly into the heart of the hive mind structure. Their mission was simple: find the central brain and destroy it from the inside. "Boarding shuttles away," Kim reported, as his tiny ships disappeared into the organic tunnels that honeycombed the massive structure. "See you on the other side, Admiral." Inside the hive mind, Kim's team fought through corridors that pulsed like arteries in a living body. The walls tried to digest them, acid dripped from the ceiling, and bio-creatures spawned from the floor to stop their advance. "Neural center located," Kim reported, his voice crackling with interference. "Deploying final package." The final package was humanity's most primitive weapon of all, a simple chemical explosive packed with radioactive material. No quantum manipulation, no energy absorption, no advanced technology at all. Just enough nuclear material to poison the hive mind's central nervous system. "Charges set," Kim transmitted. 30 seconds to detonation. All shuttles, get clear." "Sergeant Major, your shuttle is damaged," came Admiral Cho's voice. "You cannot reach minimum safe distance." "I know, Admiral," Kim replied calmly. "Tell my father I made the Earth proud." The explosion started small, just a brief flash deep inside the hive mind structure. But the radioactive poison spread quickly through the organic neural networks, disrupting the signals that controlled the entire swarm. Bioships throughout the structure began to drift aimlessly as their central coordination collapsed. "All ships, concentrate fire on the central mass," Admiral Cho ordered. "Everything we have, right now." 110 warships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons, quantum weapons, kinetic projectiles, and nuclear missiles all struck the hive mind structure at the same moment. The coordinated assault overwhelmed the swarm's adaptive defenses before they could compensate. The hive mind died like a star going supernova, its death scream echoing across space in frequencies that made reality itself shudder. When the light faded, nothing remained but scattered debris and the shocked silence of beings who had witnessed the end of galactic nightmare. 2 weeks later, representatives from 47 species gathered on Mindara for the formal ceremony. The crystal cities had been rebuilt, their telepathic networks restored. But the beings who lived there were fundamentally changed by what they had experienced. President So Young-an arrived aboard the diplomatic vessel New Seoul, the same ship that had carried Admiral Cho into the final battle. The assembled aliens watched as the leader of humanity's primitive species walked into the chamber where they had once dismissed her people as irrelevant savages. The Galactic Council hereby recognizes the United Earth Federation as the primary protector of galactic peace, Kextar announced, his telepathic voice carrying formal dignity mixed with genuine gratitude. "We offer humanity the position of supreme military command with authority over all interstellar defense forces." President An looked around the chamber at faces that had once shown only contempt for her species. Now she saw respect, admiration, and something that surprised her: hope. Earth accepts this responsibility, she said quietly. But we do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to protect it, together. General Wu Jin-yu stepped forward with a document that had been prepared by Earth's best legal and military minds. We propose the creation of a new alliance, not based on technological superiority or military might, but on shared principles. Any species that agrees to defend others, to sacrifice for the common good, and to fight against threats to Galactic's freedom will be welcome as an equal partner. The Corvan war chief Vekshar was the first to sign, followed quickly by Kextar and the other council members. Within hours, representatives from dozens of species had added their names to what became known as the Free Galaxy Compact. 6 months later, Admiral He Ran Cho stood on the observation deck of Humanity's Hand, the first joint human-alien warship ever constructed. Below her, construction crews from 12 different species worked together to build new defensive stations along the galactic rim. The perimeter sensors are reporting normal readings, Lieutenant Kang reported. No signs of swarm activity in any monitored sector. Good, Cho replied. But we stay ready. There are other threats out there, other enemies that might threaten peaceful worlds. Through the viewport, she could see Earth's yellow sun in the distance, a small star that had given birth to a species the galaxy had once considered primitive. Now human children were being born on alien worlds, growing up alongside young Valorians, Corvans, and Nexari. They would be the first truly galactic generation, raised with the understanding that strength came not from advanced technology, but from the willingness to stand together against the darkness. Corporal Jahoon Kim, son of the sergeant major who had died destroying the hive mind, supervised a training exercise where human Marines worked alongside alien recruits. The aliens were learning human tactics, adaptability, sacrifice, and the understanding that sometimes the most powerful weapon was the courage to do what needed to be done. "What do you think your father would say about all this?" asked Thexai, the young Corvan warrior who had become Kim's closest friend during the war. Kim watched as a group of Valorian cadets practiced radio communication instead of relying on telepathy, preparing for missions where they might need to coordinate with non-psychic species. "He would say we did our job," Kim replied. "We protected those who could not protect themselves. We showed the galaxy that being primitive does not mean being weak." Above them, the stars shone with a different light than they had before the Sao War. Each point of light represented worlds where billions of beings lived free from the threat of consumption, protected by an alliance that measured strength not in firepower, but in the willingness to sacrifice for others.